Welcome to the Cablecast 5.4 webinar. We're going to go over some of the new features in Cablecast 5.4. And there is a way in GoToWebinar to ask questions. Please go ahead and ask your questions. We'll actually start answering them at the end of the presentation. Presentation won't be too long, so we'll get to the questions as quick as we can. So let's get started. So what's new in Cablecast 5.4? Well, we added GPI triggers, independent playback and record resolutions on your SX server, some Genlock timing adjustments. We increased our compatibility for MPEG-2 playback, and we added IP control for the Leach router CM. So those are the big highlights of Cablecast 4. As with every major release, there's always little tweaks and stability and performance and all sorts of things under the hood. But these are the big things that we're going to talk about today. So GPI Triggers stands for General Purpose Interface. And what it allows us to do is to activate relays, so simple on and off switches. It's a very low level control, but because it's low level, it allows you to do a lot of cool things. So we added support for the OnTrack ADR 2200. It's serial controlled, and it provides, I think there's an 8 and there's a 12 port model. So you can use that in Cablecast to control the relays. You can either set them, clear them, or pulse them. And you can use this to control any piece of equipment that can be controlled using GPI. And that's a long list, a list that's too long to get into now. But it's really good for doing things like custom events and stuff that you want to like wire into your studio, like turn an on-air light on, or if you have someone that knows how to hack an Arduino GPI, you could send a tweet or something like that. But it's very low level. And then you can use it also as a fade CMS, so we can tell a GPI to clear and then to when in between program switches. So you can tell it a third-party device to fade to black at the beginning of the switch and then to fade up from black at the end of a switch. And this is all really good for doing customized channel breading. One device that people are using out in the field is the Ross MC1 master control switcher. And using this device with our GPI control, you can trigger things like squeezebacks, logo insertions, and fade to black in between programming. So let's dive into Cablecast and kind of show how we would use GPIs in Cablecast. So here we are in the Cablecast interface, and you can see I have two channels. I have my default channel, which is where I put my my Cablecast schedule my normal shows. I also have this effects channel, and that's where I can do things like schedule effects. So let's go into the schedule. And you can see I already have, an event at 4 a.m. to start the squeezeback and an event at 4:15 to end the squeezeback. And I've just repeated this every hour. And what's nice is these are just like the schedule events that you're used to working with in Cablecast. So I can do things like copy and paste them. So once I've kind of built up a default template, it's really easy for me to go through and populate that. So if I always wanted to start a squeezeback on the hour and end it, 15 minutes, or I could do 5 minutes or 20 seconds later, I can kind of schedule that out and then just use copy and paste to ripple that all around. So I can select everything, copy that, paste it, and I can, paste it to a new time of like 2 p.m. And I can do this using keyboard shortcuts too. But so now I've basically just duplicated that effect schedule. We can go forward a day and we can show how to actually create one of these from scratch. So what I would do is I would hit the new button in the schedule, and then instead of doing a show run, I would do a manual event. Once I've created one of those, I can click in it to edit it. I can give it a descriptive title. So say I want to like turn on the record light. And so I have a GPI device called Live Studio or On Air Light, and I can just set the action to set GPI. And what that does is triggers the GPI to be on in an on state, an active state. So I have a turn record light on, and then I can create a new event, or I could have copied and pasted that event to modify it. I can just create a new event. I can change this to turn light off, and then I would choose that same on-air light, and tell it to clear the GPI, so turn it into an off or an active state. And then I can, drag these around just like any other event in my schedule. So I could do, turn the light on at 12 a.m. and turn it off at 2 a.m. And again, like I said before, these are all copy and pastable. So that's how you would trigger things like squeezebacks and logo insertions, all using GPI. The other thing that GPI device can do, which isn't really demoable because it just works, is you can use the GPI to activate a relay in between switches. And so what would happen is if you had a normal program scheduled on your channel here, so say I had 2 shows back to back, like this. So what Cablecast is going to do is at 2:30:45 after the city meeting ends, it's going to do a switch event so that it switches to the suite program that's going to do it 2:30:45. And what you can set up with GPI is for a GPI to be set into the active, the set state, at the beginning of a switch, and to turn into a clear state at the end of a switch. And using something like a ROS MC1, you can have it fade to black on that trigger and then fade up from black when the trigger is cleared. And so using that, you can do all sorts of fading in between your switches. And that's using the fade CMS feature in Cablecast. And so in our location settings for our channel output, we would just use a fade CMS as the whatever GPI is, and that would send the commands to fade up and fade down those devices when the switches happen. So that's basically how GPI works in Cablecast. We have a few customers using it, and they're doing some really neat things. One customer is using carousel as a background, and then squeezing back into it using GPI triggers. And they have 2 different squeezes, and one way reveals the bottom and the other way reveals the side. And they have different carousel zones to show weather or the upcoming cable display schedule. So there's some really neat channel branding things you can do with the GPI control that's in Cablecast 5.4. So moving on, another cool thing that we added in Cablecast 5.4 is independent playback and record resolutions for your SX server, as well as some Genlock timing adjustments. And so what this allows us to do is, it's very common. People have, all HD systems now. They have HD studios, they have HD field equipment, but their channel output is still SD. So they still need to deliver an SD signal. But why do we still have to record an SD signal when our studio that we're recording from is HD? And with Cablecast 5.4, you can actually set up your HD server to record in HD, but still output an SD signal. And so to demo that, we can just jump right into Cablecast. This is our SX server here. And I can just bring up the SX configuration app. And instead of a drop-down menu to pick your system resolution like we had before, we have this dialog that we can go into that gives us all the options. And so right now we're set to playback in HD and record in HD, but we could set this to playback in an SD signal, but still record in HD signal. And the system is smart enough to not let you choose resolutions that are incompatible. So if I choose a 720p playback resolution that isn't compatible with other resolutions, I only get the option of encoding in 720p. But again, the way we see people using this the most is they're going to record in 480i, playback in 480i for their SD delivery, but record in 1080i from their HD studio. The other thing that we added in Cablecast is the ability, 5.4, is the ability to finely tune your Genlock adjustments. So you can see once we enable our Genlock, we can have these horizontal and vertical delays, which allow us to, using proper monitoring equipment, we can really lock in the timing of our SX server with the rest of the equipment in our playback system. And this is important for delivering a good, clean signal. So before, you always had the option to use an external Genlock, but you couldn't fine-tune the adjustments, which is important when you're mixing lots of different equipment. So this is new in 5.4, is the ability to adjust these Genlock timings. So again, we added in 5.4 GPI triggers, and with that you can do some cool channel branding stuff and control a wide variety of external equipment that we could not control before. We added the independent playback and recorder resolutions for your SX server, as well as timing adjustments, so you can really lock in the timing of your HD system. Two things that I can't really show in this is online webinar is we did add some additional support for MPEG-2 files. So we've always supported MPEG-2 files. We're doing some additional processing of the MPEG-2 files, which allows us to more accurately play all variety of MPEG-2, but especially MPEG-2 transport streams. And so this is coming up a lot more. People are getting transport streams from various other systems, and we've added better support for those files. The other thing is if you're using any router that uses the Leach ASCII protocol, we've added an IP control option. So now for routing switchers that don't have serial control or that are physically removed from your system where a serial cable doesn't make a lot of sense, we can control those routers using IP now. So those are the new things in Cablecast. I'm going to jump into questions. Again, it was a short presentation. I kind of expected this to be a majority question and answer. So hopefully, if anyone has questions about the new features in Cablecast 5.4, just start asking them, and then I'll read them back and start doing everything I can do. I don't see any questions yet. I'm not sure if someone needs to make it so that I can see them. Is there... Excuse me 1 second. Okay, so it looks like, is the down convert from the HD to SD off the server fast enough for real time to go to transmitter? So yes, so you can, it's playing back in real time. So you can definitely have an HD input or an SD output, and the system will work. There's no delay or anything like that. Next question from Craig is tape delay feature still on the horizon? So it's definitely something. So the question is tape delay feature still on the horizon, i.e. record a file and start playing it back prior to the recording being complete? It's definitely something that's on our product feature list. It's not something that I can offer any actual time frame of when we might do it. So that was for Craig. Next question is from Alexander. Is there any way to manually start a recording from a GPI input? Not at the present time. So right now our GPI are just external triggers. So we are able to control third-party devices. We have no mechanisms to receive GPIs and act on them. We do have an API that's being advanced all the time. So eventually you might be able to use a GPI to then trigger an API command, but that's not something that we can do right now. So next question from Steven, where can I get the GPI breakout box? I don't have an, and how much do they cost? I'm pretty sure that they are available pretty much like probably Marker Tech or B&H, similar companies probably have them. I don't have an exact number on cost, but someone told me about $100 for the lower version, but I can't be quoted on that. Sorry, I don't have that information available. The next question is, so that the question about the box, Stephen, we'll get back to you with exact details on that. I'm sorry, I should have had that information available, but I didn't. So question from Chevelle, does downconvert give option for letterbox or crop? So what we're doing with that is the system has a resolution that you're outputting in, so say 1080i. If you give it a 4:3 aspect ratio, it will do the right thing, meaning it will put black bars on the side of it and still send it out. It doesn't have a crop option. But what we are doing is we're sending a AFD, which is an active format description signal down the SDI, telling that's a signal embedded in the SDI signal that says, hey, this is a 16:9 signal, but the content in it is 4:3, and that's a hint to the TV that or whatever is consuming the signal that it can crop. It can discard the black bars on the side. So we don't actually do any cropping. We're always delivering a 16:9 signal, and we'll put black bars, and vice versa. If you're outputting in a 4:3 signal and you're feeding 16:9 content, we'll letterbox it. So we'll put the bars on the top and bottom, but we'll include the AFD signal to tell the system where the active content is. And consumer devices, as long as that signal isn't being stripped out somewhere along the way in the processing, the TV should default and provide the best viewing experience. So question from Robert. How many times can duplicate from a single TRMS if the 5.4? Sorry, I don't really understand that question, Robert. Can you clarify this question? How many times can duplicate from a signal? Sorry, I just don't really understand the question. Okay, so question, how do you put crawls on your active channel? So we have really two ways of doing this right now in Cablecast. The data still comes from the same source. So we'll close this out. So for your channel, if you go into System Settings, Channels, pick your channel, in the DSK, you can enable the standalone crawl schedule. So if I go ahead and hit save on that, now when I go back to the main menu and go into my schedule, I'll have a new tab here for channel crawls for that channel. So I have default channel, that's where I'd schedule my programming. And then I have default channel crawls, which is where I can put crawl information. And here I can just create a new crawl. And I can give it a start time for the crawl. So say like 2:00 p.m. And I can give it a length, so just 1 hour. And so that will put a crawl. And so there's two ways that data can then get to your channel output. If you have an SX server, you can use the SX video overlay app, which will output the crawl. Might not be installed on this system. Sorry, I can't show that right now. But if you're using the video overlay app, that will take that data and it will output it on videos being played only out of your SX video server. And you don't need any other hardware or equipment for that, just an SX server, and you put your crawls in, the crawls will come out. If you need to do a crawl on your entire channel, including live sources and over your bulletin board and live city council feeds and satellite feeds, you'll need an external DSK device. The most popular one is probably the Compix unit. And again, we have another app called the DSK app, which would take this same data, the crawl I just made on my channel, and it would tell the Compix or some other device like a Versumation or a Kai TV, it would tell those devices how to put the crawl over the channel. And that's a third-party device. You do need additional hardware that's not provided by Tightrope, but that can overlay everything on every video that comes into your channel, including your video server, your live sources. So that's how crawls work. So you can do a channel crawl like we did here. The other way you can do a crawl is if you go into the details for any run, you can enter a crawl in here. So and you could give that like an independent length too, so 20 minutes. And so again, just to recap, the data comes from Cablecast, but you either use the Cablecast, the SX Video Overlay app or the DSK app, depending on how you want your crawls to get on your server. Okay, so from Chuck. Can GPI triggers be offset from the start or end of a clip? If so, can you show the interface? So the mechanism for putting the GPI triggers in is very manual at this point. So you can start them whenever you want. So say here I have a show starting at 2:30. I could put a new manual event right here at 2:30:15, which is 15 seconds after that. And I can do, Squeezeback or whatever. And again, I choose my my GPI device that I want to control, and I set the GPI. And so now I would just change that to be at 2. I didn't save it before, so 2:30:15. And that's going to come in right after. A lot of people that have been using this, and this is something that we plan to address in future versions, is that this gets a little clunky because now it looks like there's a conflict, but the manual event doesn't really conflict. The GPI trigger doesn't really conflict. So what a lot of people end up doing is they end up creating a separate channel called like effects or something like that. And so you would put your offset here. So again, it's a really manual process right now. We're kind of waiting to see how people are using this so that we can then optimize it and make it a better experience. So for right now, you essentially update you have a separate schedule, you put your GPI triggers in that schedule, and you can time them any way you want. So hopefully, okay, so clarification. In previous versions of Cablecast, you could only duplicate up to 10 times from a single file. Why was there a limitation, and has this changed in 5.4? I'm not aware of any duplication. We do have I assume when you're duplicating, you mean duplicating a show. So if I just find the shows, so when you're in a show record, if you hit the duplicate, so if we go into our duplicated record, you can see that, it basically took most of the data. The one problem is the way we name these shows. And this is where you're probably running into that 10 time limit, is that the media show, we end up getting this duplicate of a show ID. And the way this adds it is it just takes the original name and adds the duplication at the end of it. Where that can run into a problem is like if you duplicate the show again, we now get like duplicate for a duplicate. Maybe I didn't do that right. So if I go into 6, duplicate it, so now I get 8. So you can see now I have like duplicate of a duplicate of a duplicate. And this is something that we're planning on changing. We've run into enough problems where people are duplicating so often that you can see it even breaks out of our UI here. One way that you could get around this right now is that if you could go in here and edit the media from this, and you can actually choose your own name. And so you can sort of reset the duplicates. So you can just call this, show ID 8. And then if you save that, sorry, I'm on a really small resolution here. So if you save that, you can kind of reset it, and you shouldn't run into the problem. If that is not answering your question, feel free to clarify again, or send us an email to support, and we can try to answer your question more clearly. So does the playout down conversion, this is a question from Chuck, does the playout down conversion also convert the closed caption data from 708 to 608? So no. What it will do is it will, sorry, I'm getting multiple questions here. So it won't take 708 and convert it into 608. There's not a real clear way to do that because 708 has stuff that doesn't directly map to 608. What I've seen most people have is they're doing 608 in a 708 wrapper, so it's 608 closed caption. If your input has that 608 and a 708, when we output an SD signal, we'll keep the 608 in the 708, or we'll just take the 608 and put it in the SD signal if that's what you're doing. Hopefully that answered the question. We can't just take a pure 708 stream and convert it into a 608. But if you have 608 stream or 608 wrapped in a 708, this is all closed captioning stuff, we will do things with those two combinations to preserve it during a down conversion. Question from Mike, is there a way to do a simultaneous SD and HD output? Not at the current way this works. We found that the most effective way to usually do that is to just use a external DA, or something that can do an up-down convert, like a up-down cross convert from Aja or Blackmagic. It's something that we're considering doing it, but usually the IOs in your video server are usually you get more value for your dollar for using them for actual channel outputs than to clone them. There's cheaper solutions to clone them than having the SX do the work. Another question from Steven, where can I get the GPI breakout box and how much? I tried answering this before. I don't have that data in front of me. I'm pretty sure it's readily available online. So if you just search for the on-track ADR 2200, someone told me that you can get them for around $100. So they should be readily available online. If we have your email address from this session, we'll try to shoot out an email saying where you can get them and how much they cost. So from George and Christopher regarding crawls, can you do two crawls on the SX server, one on top of the other with different speeds? Can a crawl be created by feeding an RSS feed? So to answer that question, no, we can only do one crawl on the SX server at the moment, and we don't have a mechanism for feeding in RSS at the moment. There is things on our roadmap to do that, but it's not currently a possibility. So only one crawl on the SX server, and there's no way to feed it from RSS. So people are posting in the chat that where you can get the on track, and I was wrong about the price point. They're $163 with a power supply. Okay, we're grabbing some more questions. So this question is from Alexander. How would I have partitioned media storage, different SharePoints? Well, so on your SX server, this is what I assume you're asking. On your SX server, you have your content drive. You can actually see on this system, this is one of our test systems, we have a bunch of different folders. So you can have as many folders, within reason here as you want on your content drive. And then in Cablecast, where you set that up is in your control module set for your SX server. So if we go into location settings, control module sets, you'll see we have one here for the video server. And there's just kind of a little micro syntax for this. So we have the one set to eDemo, and that's where we're grabbing content. If we put a pipe character, which is on my keyboard, part of the / key above the return, you do a pipe character, and then you can put in another drive. So you could do content. So you could do that as many times within reason. I think we have a max length of 255 characters or something similar. So you could have, eDemo and then pipe character eContent. And then the SX server will now look for content both in eDemo and eContent. From Tony, is the resolution output conversion global or can it be set per program? The resolution output for a system is per system. So there's one encode and one decode resolution for the system. The server will up or downscale the content depending on what the content resolution is and what your desired output resolution is. And then depending on aspect ratios and stuff, will letterbox or pillar bar the content as needed. The only other thing that you can do per content, and it's not really resolution, it's more aspect ratio, is in a show, and this is new in Cablecast 5.3, is you can see that we have the aspect ratio here set to auto. We can go in and change that to be 16 by 9 or 4 by 3. And this is useful for certain encode software. They don't put the aspect ratio flag in the right place for how we read it from files. And so you might get a file that's 16 by 9, but we detect it as being 4 by 3. So instead of having to retranscode the file to get the flag in the right place, you can come here and just force an aspect ratio. But as far as the output resolution of your system, that is, you set that once in your SX configuration app, and that's a per system configuration. It's not something that can be changed per program. Okay, so from Kayla, okay, so that was a note, so never mind. So can you show how to change the encoding quality on the SX4? Okay. Sure. So if you go into so to change the resolution that the server is going to encode in, that's a server setting, and that's changed here in the resolution area. So we can just go and choose a different resolution. As far as the quality and the codec that it's going to record, that you do in your encoder device settings. So if we go into location settings and go into devices, you can see, actually I don't have one set up here, so let's set it up. So we can do the SX encoder. And that's a record device. And so once that's set up, it's going to look sort of like this. We don't have that set up, so device address. Okay, so the important bit, this is what it should look like for you. If you go in here to your location settings, devices, and edit the device, you can choose the record quality, and here you'll see a full list of what you can encode. And this will be different depending on if your system is licensed for HD or not. So you can see there's some HD options, but as far as SD options, you have regular MPEG-2 IBP, you have a bunch of different bit rates for that. You can do some DVCAM, and then in the HD world, you can do MPEG, DVC Pro, or ProRes. So, and then you just choose that, and then that would change it for the encoder. Okay, so scrolling back up. So not quite related to the updates in 5.4, but is there a limit on how many reels you can add to a show? I don't often add a lot, but I'm running Cablecast 5.3.2 and tried to add 12 reels to a show the other day. Once I hit reel 11, it duplicated 10 instead of continuing in numerical order and stopped giving me the options. So that sounds like a bug. Just submit the bug to support at TRMS and we can look at it. There shouldn't be a limit. There actually isn't a limit. I've done shows when we were testing certain things that had hundreds of reels because it was the easiest way for me to schedule back-to-back programming. But that sounds like a bug, so just go ahead and submit that. We'll fix it. Because it happens on that boundary of 10, I assume it's the way we're parsing something. So just go ahead and shoot us something. We'll look into that. So from Tony, is creating multiple paths with a pipe character new in 5.4? And if not, when was it available? That has been a part of Cablecast since probably like Cablecast 3 or something. So if you've bought your server in the last 10 years, you definitely have that feature. So you can do that on any version that's not new in 5.4. And again, we're talking about, mapping multiple content drives in location settings, control module sets. So doing another content partition. Actually, if you have a certain vintage server, your system's probably already set up with an E and an F drive, and that's how we do that. So you just use the pipe character to map your drive. So does anyone have any more questions? Being told that we're currently waiting on questions. So if you have any, go ahead and ask them. So far, we're not getting any new questions. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us and finding out what's new in 5.4. We're already hard at work on the next Cablecast release, and I can't wait to show that off to you guys soon. If you have anything, you didn't see in 5.4, definitely got some good ideas from the questions. Send us emails, and we can. We are always soliciting feedback for our product and trying to make it better. So it looks like I have a couple more questions, so we'll try to do that. See, as soon as you try to wrap it up, people are going to come in with some more questions. So let's see what those questions are. So question, is there anything in the works to allow the ability to schedule a file to play back to multiple outputs on the router, aka a salvo? We don't have that in the works at the moment. But like I said before, we'll take that as a feature request here and we'll put it into the list. It's not something that's on our roadmap, but that doesn't mean that can't change. So thanks for the input. Someone's asking about AVCHD. That's a codec for it's a flavor of H.264. We don't currently support AVCHD. To be honest, I'm not sure the last time we looked into that. I know there was some licensing things and possibly some performance issues with that codec, but I can definitely bring that up and raise that question, and maybe we can add support for that in a future version. I'll take that back to the other engineers and see what they think. But currently, we do not support AVCHD. We do support other H.264 variants, but not AVCHD in particular. So Chevelle asks, where can I watch this in the future? So we will be posting this on YouTube channel. So if you just go to our website, you can find a link to our YouTube channel. And we also have a shorter version of this that's just a presentation. And someone just told me we have a webinar playlist. So you can watch this entire webinar and past webinars up on our YouTube channel. All right, any more questions? All right, looks like we have one more question coming in. So a question from Alex, is it possible to add a confidence monitor instead of just a thumbnail on the edit show page? So it's not a thing that's in the software right now. It's definitely something that is on our wish list of features that we want to do. I can't give you any clear answer on a time frame. There's some technical issues with it. I'm one of the engineers. It's the type of thing that I try to work on. I would love that feature. It's one of my favorite feature requests that we get. It's a pretty technical, some technical limitations to overcome, and we're definitely working on those. But at the moment, we just have the thumbnails. No, you can't actually watch the video or listen to it. So not yet. So if anyone has any additional questions, please ask questions. And then so Daniel, our awesome sales rep for the broadcast team, pointed out that if you do have a VOD server and you transcode the file, I don't have that set up on this system, but you would get a video file that you could then watch. Not quite pre-scheduling confidence. You can't, check the file in the web UI to do in or out points. But if you do a VOD server and you VOD all the content you add, you could use that. And when you do that, you do get watch now links pretty much everywhere in the UI that you see a show listed. So not quite a confidence monitor, but that is an option. Is if you do have the VOD server, you can use that. That transcodes it into a file that can be played in a web browser. So that's why that can work. Main problem with doing a confidence is that the web browser understands a very limited subset of files. So another question from Robert. Can you talk about broadcast quality H.264 and how to set it up on the SX? I can talk about it a little bit. I can't really jump really easily into a program. set it up. Basically, the problem with broadcast quality H.264 is that H.264 is really designed for, it's almost every transcoder you get, whether that be, from Apple, Adobe, or anything. They're really all trying to do web H.264. And in order to do an H.264, I don't know what just happened. I just lost a lot of stuff. Anyway, sorry, my go-to webinar control panel just yelled at me. So H.264 encoders, a lot of them are designed to do web content. You can tweak them out. My usual recommendation is you really have to set almost every setting that they provide to you. I can see if I can try to bring up compressor. But I don't have any video to really show, and it doesn't really fit on this screen very well. The big issue with it is, let's see if I can hide this current. Where is it showing the settings? The biggest problem with it is, so like here's my 1080i H.264 preset. Let's see if it, I'm not seeing where I can edit it. View, show inspector. So one of the problems with it is that a lot of times it will try to do same as source, especially in the old version of compressor. So you really have to like set things like the frame size very specifically and the audio and stuff like that. Sorry, wasn't really something I was ready to jump into. But basically just don't leave anything up to chance. Set all the options. And if you have any questions on how to set that up, here's my email address. And it should be part of the webinar, but feel free to send me an email and I can try to help you. I plan to at some point create some presets and distribute those, but I can't really show much more because I don't have any video to transcode. All right, so from Alex, we noticed that the shows and the bins are now in alphabetical order. In previous versions, they were listed by show number. Is there a way to choose between the two? So I'm assuming you're talking about the like the drop-down list or the search results, probably. We changed that and then we changed it back. We had a feature request come in and someone made a change without really checking stuff. Right now, make sure you're up to date. It might go back because there was one version where we changed something. But I think in most places, it sorts them by the event date of the show, not the show ID. So if you go into a show record and you're finding that it's not doing what you expect, it might be that you're not setting the event date. It should default to the day you create the show, but you can change it, and that might change the sort. We are working on some improvements to the schedule, and we will have more sorting options when we release that. But for right now, there's no way to change the sorting. But just make sure you're on the latest maintenance release of whatever version you're on. It might be that, if we changed it, we might have changed it back. So there aren't any more questions right now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, thanks for tuning in. We're already hard at work on the next version of Cablecast. Send us your ideas and what you want, what you need. And we'll have another one of these webinars real soon when the next version comes out. So thanks everyone for attending. And I think that's it. So have a great day.